Welcome to the January 5th, 2021 Penfield Board of Education meeting. I call the meeting to order at 7:04. Please rise, and the clerk will lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The motion would be in order that the board approve the January 5th, 2021 agenda as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? And the motion passed. And motion be in order to approve the consent agenda, which includes the approval of the minutes from the December 8th, 2020 meeting as submitted, the acceptance of the recommendation from the Committee on Special Education, the acceptance of the recommendation from the Committee of Preschool Special Education, the acceptance of recommendations from the superintendent for personnel changes, and the request to improve the recommended bidders as you see listed, and the request to approve the recommended bidders, additional bidders as you see listed. May I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Which brings us to special reports. And so, Chair Putnam?
Sure. So this evening we have our representation on the BOCES board, Miss Lisa Latin, Penfield resident, and we also have a special guest with her tonight, which is Dan White, Superintendent of BOCES 1. So I'll invite you guys up. There's a clicker there. I believe you have some slides for us, and we'll be writing down lots of questions for you.
Couple dozen, Tom.
Couple dozen, no problem.
Good with that. How is everybody tonight?
Good. Good. How are you?
Good to see you all
You too.
again. Ready?
Okay, we are all set, and let's hope this works. So tonight, Dan and I are going to be talking about diversity and equity at Monroe 1 BOCES. And this stems from one of the ongoing objectives for Monroe 1 BOCES is partnership, service, and collaboration. And we really seek to innovate and collaborate to evolve and enhance a system of programs and services that are relevant, consistent, visionary, cost-effective, reflective of component needs, and promote diversity and equity in an ever-changing educational landscape. So how did Monroe 1 BOCES arrive here? And I'm going to turn it over to Dan and let him speak to that.
Sure. So we're going to talk a little bit about give you some information on the new service that we've developed at Monroe 1 in collaboration with the school districts in the county. And this really goes back to a couple years ago, and Superintendent Putnam was involved in those conversations about districts and their ongoing work in equity and diversity, and where were they with their internal capacity with all the initiatives they were trying to undertake. And so what we did is engaged the school districts in a conversation about what they felt they really needed, things that they were doing, what capacity they felt they had internally, and how could we as a county work to support that on a regional basis. The intent of this really is to, as it says right here on the slide, the school districts had a need to increase their internal capacity to support their ongoing work. And we're going to talk a little bit about in a minute where districts were at, the various places where districts were at in this work. So the COSER, what we developed, and it's brand new, it is, we just made a hire, and we're going to introduce that hire to you shortly. The hire just started on January 4th. But a couple things about the service that we developed here, and what's important about that. It's intended, as I said, to provide internal capacity to districts seeking to further their initiatives and develop new initiatives centered around diversity and equity. the participating districts are eligible for BOCES aid and the services they participate on. But the services, we're building this from the ground up. This is the very beginning of this service, and it's going to be based upon, as all service should, but truly based upon the needs of each individual participating district. Districts are in vastly different places across this county. They need different types of resources and support to truly get this work done with fidelity. And but it will include and not be limited to things like strategic planning, helping school districts and boards look at policies, codes of conduct, those type of things. Needs assessments. Districts are in varying different places about needs assessments they think they have done in their community as well as their greater school community. Review of things, just for a couple examples of hiring practices. There's been a lot of work that have been done in the county, a lot of great work, but how do we pull all those things together and create resources for districts as we review hiring practices? And then a number of our districts also work with varying consultants in this area, and the ability to have us employ that consultant that allows it, number one, to be eligible for BOCES aid, but that also increases capacity, I think, of all of us around the county. So, I mean, that's really a brief overview, folks, but the intent is, we're going to try and meet every district where they are at, to help them determine their needs and their strategic planning needs, and help them build from there. And as you can tell, as many districts as there are in this county, they are all in varying different places in this work, and have prioritized different things over the years. You want to talk about Tasha?
So we are proud as BOCES to welcome Ms. Tasha Potter as our Director of Diversity and Equity Planning. Tasha comes to Monroe One BOCES from the Greece Central School District, where she served as the Director of Equity and Family and Community Engagement, and she brings to Monroe One extensive experience in building a responsive, inclusive, and a mindful educational community. So as Dan mentioned, she's just began her role on January 4th. So she was ready to hit the ground running with some great ideas and went through quite an extensive interview process.
She did.
Before they arrived here.
She did, and we're very, very happy, and we're very lucky to have Tasha. As I mentioned, we're building this from the ground up, and first of all, Tasha is a very experienced school administrator. She understands schools, she understands communities and systems, but put on top of that, she also has tremendous experience in doing this work. And it was very evident as we went through the interview, a very extensive interview process. This was clearly the candidate who has the experience and the ability and the knowledge to truly bring this together. And she's really being tasked with a unique thing because this is brand new for us. So she has the ability to kind of build this from the ground up based upon the needs of the districts, and we expect it's going to mean different things for different districts. So we're extremely excited, because again, she just started on Monday, but very, very happy. I think we're very lucky to have Tasha leading these efforts, really now not just at Greece, but in the districts around the county, at least the ones that want to participate in the service. So I'm very happy that this is the case.
And questions?
Board members, any questions?
I do.
Catherine? Officer?
When you refer to BOCES providing help to the districts seeking to further their initiatives,
Sure.
Based on their needs, that's what you were saying.
Exactly.
So, how would that look? Would you be expecting a district to say, okay, we've got this, this, and this in place, and we need help here? Or would you look at their plan and say, this is a good plan, but we see a need here or there?
Yeah.
Or am I going out too far?
No, okay, you're exactly right on
Okay.
both, by the way. And I think the really exciting thing with someone with Tasha's experience is going to be both of those, right? That needs assessment of where do you think you're at? Where does your community think you're at? Where do your students think you're at? And then really, where are you at, and what pieces do you have in place? What pieces do you see? And also some advisement to the second part of that, Catherine, is here are some things you may really want to consider and build upon based upon the data that you have, based upon your needs assessment and so forth. So it really can be a combination of both things. And you hit it on the head, because every district while many have engaged in this work, they are not all at the same place clearly.
Yeah.
And they all need help in different areas. For some of those folks, it is truly help getting the work done. For a lot of those folks, it's advisement in this is the direction you may want to consider to go. So,
Okay.
like I said, I wish I could give you a lot more detail, but it's really going to be dependent upon the district. And once they get in there and start getting that work done, I think from Tasha's perspective, what that looks like and what the advisement is on how to move forward.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds too like as you get more involved, as we all get more involved in it, things will unfold and maybe the process would look a little more predictable.
I think it could, and I think the important thing is that we're, and Tasha in the interview process was able to articulate this very well. The districts have to own this work, and the people in the districts and the communities have to own this. The intent of this is to provide the capacity and support to allow that to happen. So the work that gets done has to be legitimate, and it's got to be meaningful, and it's got to be lived.
Right.
And I think that's where the support of that expertise will help people walk through what is really, you know, for all of us in all of our organizations, it is an ongoing process. This is a process that never really stops. It is, but there is a prioritization piece about where are your, you know, high need areas and things you may want to address first, second, third, those type of things.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Great question, though.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board members? All right, well, thank you. This is another great and timely example of the kind of services that BOCES provides to districts, and really helps make it cost effective for us to do more than we could do on our own. So again, we look forward to seeing this build out and hearing more about it and working with you on this in the future.
Absolutely, and we appreciate your time tonight. It's good to see you folks. So
You too.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Bye-bye.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Thank you both, Dan and
You're
Lisa,
welcome.
for your time. That concludes special reports for this evening.
Okay, which brings us to visitor speaking time. This is designated as a time for district residents to bring their comments to the board. The board encourages residents to share their opinions, voice their concerns, and offer suggestions in a constructive atmosphere. Matters involving particular individuals or specifics of negotiations are not permitted during public session and should be addressed privately with the board president or superintendent. Comments brought to the board will be taken under consideration. However, this is not a time when the board can answer questions or engage in dialogue. A request to speak form must be filled out prior to the start of the meeting and given to the district clerk. Speakers are expected to identify themselves with their name and address before presenting and limit their comments to 5 minutes or less. The board president reserves the right to limit the total amount of visitor speaking time based on the length of the agenda. Written communications, of course, are always encouraged. Thank you. And we do have one person who's come to join us, Jason Hanna. Mr. Hanna, thank you for joining us.
Hi, thanks for listening tonight. I want to hit on a few topics. Number one, our bus driver situation that shut down the entire school district. I talked to Erica Stutz a little bit after as well, but you know, you read the memo and it makes it look like 4 bus drivers shut down everything. That's unacceptable to me. You say you had a problem before the pandemic of bus driver shortages. Figure it out. Do they need to be paid more? I don't know. Do you need to advertise more? But to shut down the entire district, please don't do that again. Figure it out. Wednesdays, I know a resident spoke about a month ago. We need our kids in school. Governor Cuomo's not saying we can't teach on Wednesday. If you need to clean more on Tuesday night, figure it out. If we need to go 3-3-2-2 or 2-3-2-3, you know, our daughters, my daughter in 10th grade and 6th grade, they need to be in school. It's really disappointing. You know, we're 4 months into this, and we're doing nothing on Wednesday for in-person. It's really frustrating. On the lunch and breakfast situation, it's not a big deal. It's pennies. You know, I know it doesn't mean a lot to most of these families, but you know, the school board voted unanimously to raise lunch prices and breakfast prices across the board. It wasn't huge. It was like 5%, whatever it was, but that was disappointing, I guess, to see that. And weeks later, the state came in and fixed it. And now students don't have to pay, thankfully, for a while. The budget was approved. I voted for it. It was hard to vote for it. The one thing I thought was a little bit interesting was the superintendent increase of over $8,000. Here we are in the pandemic. Again, I voted for the budget, but not a lot of other businesses gave their people increases during this past year. Lastly, I'd like to say thank you to the teachers and staff. They continue to work tirelessly on the front lines. It's hard work. It's not easy. So that's all. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hanna. And as always, we appreciate having you and any other community members come down and speak to us. Were there any other speakers, Sharon? Okay. Which brings us to the student representative report. Abby?
Hello, everybody. It is that time again. To start things off, at Penfield High School, numerous Penfield students were honored at the Urban League's 36th annual early recognition virtual ceremony. And members of Leo's Club helped out at the Penfield Ecumenical Food Shelf during the holiday season. And the boys varsity baseball team helped to give back to our community by supporting the Giving Tree. At Cobbles, a Cobbles parent and ceramicist gave throwing demonstrations to several virtual classes, and you could see that the kids were ecstatic about it. Many Cobbles families also donated to the Cobbles Cares Holiday Help Fund. At Scribner, various students made cards that were delivered to Lifespan. At Indian Landing, in place of the winter concerts, the 5th grade bands of both Cobbles and Indian Landing performed in a virtual rendition of the event, and that a similar situation had also taken place at other elementary schools because the concerts had also been canceled due to COVID. At Harris Hill, Miss Girton won the Golden Apple Award, and a class of first graders wrote a thank you note to custodians to show their appreciation for all of the hard work they do to keep the school clean. And 2 brave students rode their bikes to school in the chilly weather. My brother would love to do that, but my mom will not let him. And also at Indian Landing, Dave, a custodian of 34 years, did a final walkthrough of the building before heading into retirement. And Bay Trail, students were able to get cozy and participate in multiple December dress-up days. And lastly, for district-wide news, the food service department provided Penfield School District families with free meals from the 28th to the 31st of December. All students were off from the 22nd to the 4th for holiday break. The Browncroft Community Church provided lunches for all Penfield School District teachers, and it included a heartfelt message. And lastly, Group A students returned to school on Monday, January 4th.
Thank you. Any questions for Abby? No. Great. Well, thank you so much.
I have to be my clicker, Dan. So Dan's going to be, Dr. Drift will be my clicker. We're not working up here, but we can manage. Abby once again did an incredible job in does a great job stealing all my limelight, but you present it much better than I ever can.
I apologize for that.
No,
Doing it happens all the
never
time.
apologize for that. It's awesome.
That's the goal.
That is the goal.
That is the goal, right?
So I just have some student and staff honors and then some updates. So we'll start with our Golden Apple Award winner, our Harris Hill teacher, Ms. Gerton, on being named a winner of the Channel 8's Golden Apple Award. And Abby did mention this, and there's a photo of our incredible teacher. Several students and parents nominated her prior to the COVID outbreak last March. And due to the COVID shutdown and a subsequent her maternity leave, this award was a long time coming and was finally awarded to Caitlin in December. So congratulations. You can tell how excited she is. That was snapped right when she found out. Very excited for that. And it's, you know, all of our teachers are Golden Apple teachers, but it's really great to have Channel 8 be such a long-time partner with school districts with their Golden Apple Award. And so even through COVID, sometimes they present virtually as opposed to in person, but we appreciate that partnership, and Caitlin is very, very deserving. Our next slide, I'm very excited, is our Best Buddies champion. So congratulations to PHS sophomore Ian Lattin and his family on being named a Best Buddies Virtual Champion of the Year by the Western New York chapter. Some of you might recognize Ian's mom, who happens to be in the audience right now as our board rep, Lisa Lattin. And Best Buddies, so you're aware, we've talked about it at the board meetings before, but Best Buddies is a worldwide organization that promotes and provides opportunities for inclusion for those with developmental and intellectual disabilities. And Penfield has a chapter at Bay Trail and at the high school. And I just want to talk a little bit about, the first chapter was at Bay Trail, and supported by the Golisano Foundation a few years ago. And because of the success there, the high school also joined in, and we have a Best Buddies group. It's a really amazing club and organization where the leaders of the club are both students, students with disabilities and students in the general education population. And it's really about coming together and meeting each other and being peers and doing activities together. And COVID's made that a little bit difficult, but there's still some really cool things taking place. And Ian is an exceptional young man, makes Penfield very, very proud. I'd be saying that even if his mom wasn't in the audience. He is incredible, and having done this for a little while and been in the district for a long time, the Ian of 10th grade is leaps and bounds from Ian that I met in elementary school. And I think we can say that about all kids. But man, he's just a special young man, and because Mom's here, I'll say please make sure that Ian knows on behalf of the entire district how proud we are of him. So I'm hoping he's drinking Kool-Aid out of that trophy he's got. Our next slide is just holiday giving, and in your agenda is a long list, but Penfield students, families, and staff members once again participated in a variety of giving projects this holiday season. And just on behalf of the district and the board, just thank you for your generosity in this community, really stepping in and helping out. And it's not all financial giving. Sometimes it's love and compassion. So Scribner, Indian Landing, and Bay Trail students made holiday cards for nursing home residents through Lifespan of Greater Rochester. And the board might be aware that was an ask from Shirley Johnson from Monroe County School Board Association, and all it took was an email from me to say, hey, can we help out? And people really dropped everything, not really, but got cards written. You can see some of them there, just really cool. And with the COVID pandemic, the number of nursing homes that can't have visitors and can't have people come in and can't do what we do here in Penfield, is get into many of the local nursing homes to play music and sing songs during the school day. We couldn't do any of that, and so I know that I've heard from some folks up in Lifespan who are just so appreciative of what those cards meant, especially coming from some of our younger students. And the baseball team, as Abby mentioned, collected gift cards, donations for the PHS Giving Tree, and so thank you to them as well. And that, I'll shift a bit to updates, and I've started adding these really during COVID because there's so much information coming in at all different times. And so just as my opportunity to share with the community some updates of what's happening. So first is the COVID-19 updates. If you're watching the news, this isn't new for anybody, but we're at, in Monroe County, now over 10% infection rate. if you can think back, and I do daily, to what we were told what would happen at 10% back in August, we'd be shut down, we would be remote, there would be no school, and thanks on behalf, honestly, Dan White's in the audience, and thanks on his advocacy and Dr. Mendoza in the Monroe County Department of Health and superintendents, you know, we want to always keep students and staff safe, and we do know that schools continue to be a place that is safer than your general community interaction. And so Penfield is still in the yellow zone. If you look at the governor's numbers, we're orange getting close to red, but we are still considered the yellow zone because the only one who can change that zone is the governor, and he hasn't done that yet. Talk to me tomorrow night and see if that answer's the same, but we're going to stay in yellow for as long as we can.
Right.
So we actually met with Dr. Mendoza today, and he has recommended that school districts, even those in yellow, begin administering rapid tests to students and staff again. And we're really looking into that. They have tests available, which, you know, we weren't sure of. They have tests available, and we will be looking at starting testing as if we were in orange. So we're going to be shooting for 5% of each of our schools' population, potentially next week. We will share that out with families via email and staff as well before we do anything. We would only test students who did have their parents' consent to testing, and you know, 5% a week of our in-person population is not a very large number. If you remember back before Thanksgiving, we did just over 20% in a week. So if we're looking at 5% a week, we can do that. We'll be doing that at all of our schools to really take the burden off just the high school and the middle school, which is how we did it when we first were put into the yellow zone. So, you know, the COVID precaution protocols, and I know I say this at every meeting, but it's so important for all of us, is the reason that schools are where they are with a low infection rate, and so far in Penfield, based on the Department of Health, working with them, no known transmissions in the schools, is because we're requiring masks at all time, because distancing of 6 feet, which is required. So these are all things that are required. The distancing of 6 feet whenever possible, masks at all times, the daily COVID screenings for both staff and students, and then following all the recommendations from the Monroe County Department of Health. And so these are things that we need to keep being diligent about in order to keep our schools open, even in the hybrid format. We don't want to backtrack, and we don't want to go remote. So the next slide is the COVID vaccine rollout. Just want to talk a little bit about that. If you watch the news, it has started with healthcare workers who are considered Tier 1. We believe and are hopeful that our school nurses and health office staff will be part of Tier 1, and then district and school staff is going to be part of Tier 2. And so vaccines, when that exactly is, what that time frame is, I can't tell you. Because we don't know yet, nor does the Department of Health. They're still working through Tier 1. Not all healthcare workers have had an opportunity to receive a vaccine. But I do want to talk, because obviously vaccines is always a important topic, is that vaccines can only be mandated by a statutory order from New York State. And that's a really good sentence, and I just want to let everyone know, because I feel pressure to say this. That's exactly what Dan White told me today, so I just typed it while I was meeting with him on Zoom. But it is important for us to all know, because I know there's lots of, as we said in the beginning of this, you know, please don't listen to rumors in Facebook and social media. You know, we're going to give you the facts that we know them, and I'm not going to play with rumors and gossip. So there's lots of rumors about vaccines and requiring vaccines, but please know the school district can't do that, nor will we try. The vaccines can only be mandated from New York State. We're not able to mandate vaccines for staff or students, and so I think that's important for the community to know. Dr. Mendoza and the Monroe County Department of Health are fully supportive of schools remaining open for in-person learning due to our protocols and testing data. And although, you know, the governor does a good job in press conferences making it sound like it's all up to the schools, one thing that hasn't changed is all of the mandates for social distancing, the number of kids that can be on a bus at one time, the number of kids in a classroom at one time. None of those things have changed. And so when we talk about being open in person, we are still in the world of having to be hybrid here in Penfield. We don't have the room in order, or the staff, in order to get everybody back in 5 days a week. That is our hope. I will never stop hoping for that. And as we look to plan for the spring, the summer, and next year, that is going to be our hope, but we also want to make sure that we are keeping in mind that if we have to be hybrid for longer, we want to make sure that our program is stronger as we move through. The next slide is around transportation updates. I think this is really important. I have shared some with staff. I've talked with families via email, and I've shared with a number of parents who I've spoken to. Our transportation team, I just have to say, is absolutely amazing. I've said this every year, even before COVID. I meet with in a typical world, I meet with transportation and our bus drivers to welcome them back in the summer. For many students, they are the first and last staff member that's seen each day. And I can speak to that as a parent as well. That driver's the first one to see the kids and the last one to see the kids. And the number of times they're able to step in and support our social emotional needs and our social emotional work is just amazing. Now, as a public school district, we have to be able to transport all students who live beyond walking distance. So, when we did have to close because a number of people were out, we did have 4 bus drivers that tested positive for COVID. That rose to at least 8. And we moved to remote because it's not just drivers with COVID, it's also drivers who are out for other illnesses that happen to take place in the winter months of Rochester, and also for short-term medical and short-term surgeries. Our drivers are very experienced individuals. Many of them have retired from full-time work and then are driving as a secondary career. And so once we hit that threshold of not having enough drivers, I can't say to the community, hey, if you can bring your kids to school, we'll keep educating them. And those who can't get to school, I'm sorry. We are a public school district, and I know that's really difficult. It doesn't seem fair, but that is when we look at equity and the work that Dan and Lisa presented, and I'll talk about in a minute, this is critically important, and it's just important for us to know that. So we are working tirelessly with transportation, with their organization, with the director of transportation, to find ways to continue to remain in a in-person setting, even if we're running into issues with drivers and illness. It's no different with a school. We've got substitutes, and there are a number of, we're lacking in substitutes across Monroe County in the state, and so a lot of substitute teachers who do it for the love of subbing are stepping away because the COVID world is so different. And so we can stay open and work through lots of scenarios, but if we really get hit in a building where we don't have enough adults to teach the children, monitor safely, and follow all of those rules, we'll have to look at going remote. That's just the reality, and we're working tirelessly not to have that happen, but I also want to be fair, transparent, and honest that there are going to be things that could come up that are going to impact our ability to be in person. So we are working now behind the scenes and have been to possibly consolidate routes, possibly rerouting to have more drivers available to sub in when necessary. And I just want to remind folks that this is not a Penfield issue with transportation. There is a national shortage of bus drivers that we have talked about at board meetings, emails to the community, postings in papers, and signage all around our district, really pushing for increasing the number of people interested in driving buses. It's not new to the board to hear because we had a presentation a while back when this really started to be an issue, because 2 years ago they changed the rules for school bus drivers, and they all now have to have a CDL license, the same license to drive that double tractor trailer from any one of the nation's grocery stores that you see driving on the thruway. Our bus drivers have to have that same license. That doesn't really make sense, and we continue to advocate with that's a federal rule, and we continue to advocate with our federal representatives to change that, because just for an example, when a bus breaks down, we don't expect the bus driver to get out and change the tire. The bus driver needs to stay on the bus with the children, make sure that they're safe, and they call the bus mechanic who comes out and fixes it. So that's really where it's different than driving a tractor trailer on the thruway. Many of our bus drivers are driving only in neighborhoods in our Penfield area. They don't ever head out onto even 490. So I just talk about that this is not something that's new, and it's not something that's new for just Penfield. This is an issue with our bus driver shortage and the need for bus drivers. So what can the community do? Encourage any retiree that you know to give me a call or go to our webpage and sign up to be a bus driver. We have a very decent wage. We do paid training. There are some bonuses for being certified and staying with us. We've added lots of things in there to try to make it as attractive as possible. And bus drivers have a really, it works out well sometimes because we need them in the morning and we need them in the afternoon, and they've got all day if they want to do something else. So please encourage anybody who might want to drive a bus to drive a bus. Dan, I don't know what you're doing, but if things don't work out at BOCES, we need bus drivers. So honestly, in all reality, we did a couple years ago get a couple of bus drivers apply simply from word of mouth from our community, so thank you. So we are hiring, paid training. It's an awesome team to work with, and we're going to continue monitoring this and hopefully be able to fill all of our routes as necessary. Our next slide is around hybrid and 100% remote updates, and just a reminder too that schools continue to demonstrate that COVID screening, distancing, masking, and sanitation are keeping the infection rate low and slow the transmission of the virus. So our plan is to remain open in the hybrid instructional model through June. Variables that may impact our ability to remain in person, I've sort of talked about these already, is staff shortages, especially our bus drivers and teachers. We will hit a point where if we don't have enough, we have no other option but to move to remote. Executive orders from the governor. The governor says at a press conference, guess what? We've hit a certain percentage, and he's recommending that all schools, or ordering all schools to close like happened in the spring. We can't, as a school board, as a superintendent, or even as a community, say no to that. It's an executive order. Recommendations from the New York State or the Monroe County Department of Health. And as I mentioned earlier, the Monroe County Department of Health and Dr. Mendoza are working tirelessly with superintendents to keep us open and in-person hybrid for hopefully the rest of the year. In-school rapid testing data that's aligned with county rates. So when we start testing, we really hope that we'll see what we did before Thanksgiving, which is that our infection rate in school is very, very small. It was about 0.46%. When we did this before Thanksgiving. So that can be helpful. If for some reason in-school rapid testing shows an infection rate much, much higher, like it is in the county right now, that's possible that we have to have a discussion about moving to remote that we might not be able to control. And then others. So again, I'm all for, and I think the board is, and our community is that for some magic way, everybody's vaccinated by February 15th, and we can come back 5 days a week, full school. We're there. We can shift real quick back to a 5-day schedule with everybody there. But we can't do that now with the mandates from New York State. But we are working tirelessly to make sure we can stay open as much as possible and build our asynchronous lessons when kids are not in school. Continuing on with hybrid and remote, if we do need to shift to our 100% remote instructional model, which we did the 4 days before December break, we will inform our community as soon as possible. However, it's really important for the community and families to understand and have a plan in place. It is, what I think about as a superintendent and as a parent, is it is now January in Rochester. So, we have a plan in place that if there were a snow day, what am I going to do? I mean, I'll be fair and honest. I got a couple of kids who are old enough to be home. I have a 2.5-year-old who cannot be home by himself. I think he could probably put up a good argument on why he should be allowed to stay home by himself, but he can't. So, my wife and I both work, and we have a plan in place. But I know that's really difficult, but it is just a reminder to families is, make sure that you do have a plan, that you've talked about it, you've thought through it, because we're going to do everything we can to remain open, but winter weather and ice could close us and make us go remote for a day or two, and something like we talked about around staffing could also impact that. Families had an opportunity to request a change to their child's instructional model. These changes will begin the first day of the second semester. We did have a number more families shifting from virtual to hybrid than the other way around, but we did have some families shift from hybrid to 100% remote. And so those changes will take place on February 1st. Communication to the impacted families who asked for a change will be shared by the end of next week. Many of them have already heard from their building principal, but we'll make sure that everybody K-12 has heard by, at the very latest, at the end of next week. And then I'll shift to, actually, I'm so glad that Dan White and Lisa Lawton are still here, because we're also going to talk about a different topic, but one that, COVID is all-encompassing. It's all of the board here, Dan and Jim and Barb, that's really all we talk about some days is COVID, and it really, truly is all-encompassing. But what we don't want to do as a district is to forget the other reasons we are here, and that is to educate and to focus in on the work this school board started really deeply last year, but more so well over 5 years ago, around educating the whole student. And because of the board's direction and their goal setting, we worked hard, and Jim's office has done an incredible job around our social emotional learning framework, and really have a plan to try to make sure that we hit professional development, review curriculum, and focus on social emotional learning and that development of the whole student. Well, this year, especially at the end of last year, over the summer, met with a number of parent groups and students and teachers, and really started talking around the fact that we need to do more with equity. And this is where the BOCES coaster is going to be a huge help for us. And as Dan mentioned, different districts are in different spots. And so we have been working to find a partner to work with to conduct an equity audit. And just as a reminder, after the Parkland school shooting, there were a number of community members and staff and students and even myself. We all had great ideas on what we should do to make our school safer. And what we ended up doing was hiring an outside firm to come in and conduct a safety audit. And they provided us with some amazing points of view without the Penfield rose-colored glasses on. But they were also able to say, these are things you're doing that are incredible. These are things you really need to think about changing, and these are priorities that need to change now. And we're able to build that. Part of that is we hired Brandon Fox as our security and preparedness manager, who works closely with myself and Dan and Alan McNiff to really bring some unity and some consistency with our safety and security practices across the district. So that same philosophy is what brought us to conducting an equity audit. Instead of us sitting around and trying to figure out what we should do better for equity, let's bring in a group that does this for a living and has got some great ideas. And so after a long search, we talked with a number of people, both local and further away. We have partnered with Progression Partners. And it is a minority-owned business that helps schools across the nation respond in healthy ways to diversity by developing inclusive policies and practices. And so this equity audit, next slide please, is, thank you. I gotta get a ding like a film strip. So the equity audit, I'm not gonna read through this whole slide, but the equity audit, it has an overarching focus. It's gonna start this month, it'll go through June, and then beyond. And so really the 4 areas that we are looking at to get out of this audit is a focus in on our current curriculum and instruction, professional development of teachers and training for all staff, recruitment and hiring practices, and our code of conduct. The audit itself, we'll go to the next slide because it breaks it down. The first cohort of staff, there will be staff from all 6 buildings. Each building will have a equity team, and there will be a district equity team made up of staff from the district and staff from each building. And we will all go through 4 training modules together. And that is, the focus is assessing cultural differences, valuing diversity, identifying systematic barriers, and transformation to equity. So each of those training sessions will take place with the team from each school and the district team. And then, we'll go to the next slide, the first cohort that's going to be doing this work in the spring, those same teams are then going to be working on an equity action plan for each building and the school, and they will all be aligned together with the district mission as an umbrella for the schools. So there are 2 formal planning sessions with the folks from Progression Partners working with us and bringing their expertise to the table. And then part of that too that's in here is equity walks, where the teams will be working with the mentors from Progression Partners to do physical walks of our buildings, observations of classrooms, to really pick up the feel, the climate, and the culture on what we're doing around cultural responsive education and pull some ideas on what we might be able to do better. We're doing some incredible work in Penfield. Dan White mentioned districts are in all different places. We've been working on this and offering professional development for a couple of years now, but this is really going to be that next step to build a real plan that will be a living document that we can really dig into and do this to make sure that we are really focusing in on the equity, diversity, and inclusion parts of the social and emotional learning work that we're doing. And so very excited about that, and we teachers we're requesting volunteers because this work does take place outside of the school day. It's not paid positions, it's volunteer work with people who are passionate about this, and we'll be building those teams within the next week, and then the first training module is at the end of January. A similar email will be going out to families looking for parents who want to be involved in a more district-wide equity group to continue these conversations, work, and be a sounding board for the ideas that Penfield has to make sure that we are building a school district that represents all of our students and really supports every student coming into our building. And so that is my updates. I'm very passionate about the equity work.
Yeah.
So if there's any questions from the board.
Thank you, Tom. Board members, any questions for Dr. Putnam? Make sure I see it. Okay. Tom, you talked about the 5% testing.
Yes.
And that was in consultation with Dr. Mendoza and some others. If we go to Orange, does that gain us any advantage in terms of if the Como says we go to Orange, we're going to shut down, can we say we've already sort of essentially pre-qualified and avoid impact?
Well, now with the new rules in Orange, we don't shut down.
We don't shut down.
No, so if we go to Orange, we do not have to shut down at all. We just have to do 5% testing a week to get 20% within a month. So we're basically looking at doing about 5% a week. It won't be part of the orange zone, but we're doing it to collect that data and make sure that we are ready to go. It also allows us to trial when we are mandated in orange that we have to do 5% testing. We'll have a well-oiled machine to make sure that we're supporting the testing requirement.
Okay, thank you. The other thing you were just talking about, let me go back to that. You were talking about the equity audit and the cohorts. Can you explain how the cohorts are?
Yeah, I got really excited about cohort 1. So cohort 1, it will be made up of basically 6 staff members from each of the 4 elementary buildings, and then 7 or 8 staff members from the high school, and 7 or 8 from Bay Trail, and then 6 from district office. So we're at about 50 individuals that will be training cohort 1. Cohort 1 gets the 4 training sessions, a lot of deep work and deep learning and understanding. It's an opportunity for us to have the shared understanding of the work, shared vocabulary of the work, and then real understanding of what the planning will look like for our equity plans at our building and district. And then we'll work through that as school teams and as a district team by June to have a completed plan that would be incorporated into basically our school action plans for next year from our buildings. Cohort 2 is going to start in the fall, and cohort 2 will continue this training. They'll just get the 4 overarching training sessions. They need to be relatively small because they're about 50, no more than about 24 to 30 people in those training sessions because they're very personalized and questions are asked, and they will to have cohort 2 in the fall, and we'll get more teachers trained that way. And then we plan to look at cohort 3 in the spring and sort of continue this work. At that same time, from our equity plans, we're going to be offering other required and optional professional development opportunities and trainings for our staff. So the cohort training is not the only training that takes place around race, diversity, and inclusion, but it really will be the emphasis of the work that we're doing in the district.
And so cohort 1 is the one that will lead the overall group into the development of action plans.
Yes. Okay. Yep. So you don't have to develop the action plan every cohort, but like cohort 2, they might want to look at the action plan. They may bring other ideas to tweak it and shift it a bit, but you write one action plan, and that's sort of that living document that you start with.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, Mark,
Yes, go ahead, Catherine.
if I can, because you brought up about the orange zone, which prompted a couple questions.
Sure.
Tom, I think that you did explain pretty concisely about what would bring about a shutdown to complete remote learning. But I want to make sure I understand it. Unless, in the foreseeable future, the way it stands now, the only time that would happen would be about a staffing issue, either through transportation or subs or lack thereof, or orders from the governor or the Department of Health.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't miss anything else, right?
No, the only caveat I think is if we are in orange and we are required to test and submit that to the state, that once we hit a certain percentage, I think it's 3%, I look at Jim, you might run off the top of your head, so 3% in the orange zone, I think we have to move.
When all that first came out. But
Oh, so it
I'm
could be
assuming it
different.
could change if we get directed to
Okay,
do that.
So
okay.
that'd be the only one, so it's staffing related, it's governor related, it's Department of Health related, and then if we were testing in orange and our infection rate hit, whatever their threshold is, which we believe is 3%, it was back when they announced it, that would also move us to remote.
Okay, thank you.
It's sort of like the odds of Powerball and Mega Millions
Yeah,
that I think
I
are
know.
really people that are talking on the news. Like it really feels like we're doing everything we can.
Yeah.
But then out of left field, there could be something coming
Well-
saying we're going to do something different.
Yeah, and it's that left field thing, and I don't think that anybody anticipated a staffing shortage, although we all thought in the back of our minds, because when the school year started, the percentages were so low, and they're thinking, they're saying, oh, if we get to 10%, it's like, that's not gonna happen, because we were in such a place, but things have changed, and,
I think the one thing I'd share is that without a doubt, we were worried about staffing. I would say at a district
Okay,
level.
okay.
I look at Barb for that. We look at our sub list. There's, and this is not new. We've talked about it, but really probably a lot internally, and we're doing so many new things to try to get candidates to apply. But, our local colleges, I know this has been a little while, it's beginning of the year, and I look at Barb, but I recall like 60% less kids going into education in our local universities, where we pull a lot of students from, a lot of new teachers. So when you're looking at, their programs are diminished by 60%, that was that's going to be an impact on your substitutes. We have two different groups of subs typically. We have retired teachers who love it and come back to work on their terms and work here and there, and we have new people who don't have a full-time job yet who are subbing to, get into the field and get known and get some experience. And so when you have less people coming in, we have
Right.
less subs to draw from.
Right.
And then we have the same issue where we have some incredible retirees who want to keep working, but when you hit a pandemic, they say no thank you.
Well,
They're going to take
right.
a year off and see how it goes.
yeah.
For transportation, this has been an issue nonstop.
Well-
This is one where we have typically had about, the way that we do it, we have some per diem subs. We pay drivers to be there without a real route, so we have sort of subs in the wings. But, even if I wanted to say, if I came to this board 2 years ago and said, I want to hire 30 drivers and just have them stay at home until I need them, but we're going to pay them full time, we would have all said no. That's
Right.
not fiscally responsible.
Right.
The other piece is, I couldn't find 30 people who are certified bus drivers who want to just wait at home and get paid.
Well, yes, and Mark and I are on legislative, and, the advocacy that's been done in Albany, and we have talked and talked and talked to our representatives about the CDL requirement, getting them their license. They have to go to Pennsylvania now. That level of frustration is always existing because of state mandates and state requirements and rules and regulations, which change all the time.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and the thing about the CDL is that's a federal one, which is even
Well,
further,
yes,
which is
that's
even
true.
further out of our
Yeah.
control.
Yes, that's
And they
true, but
didn't-
we have still talked about it
Oh, yes.
because, the state representatives, there's that interaction there, but it's a huge frustration. And the testing, it was more of a state issue. So you
Yeah.
combine those,
Yep.
and if I were looking at that as a job requirement, I probably would say, I don't know. I don't know about that,
I think
It
you'd
might be-
talk with me, and then after you'd be like, that sounds like the best job ever, Tom.
And I just wouldn't be
I'm
able
gonna
to
apply for
resist.
that."
That's true.
I just, what's interesting too, and I will share, because our drivers are amazing. They're incredible men and women who come in and do this job, and from all different sort of age groups and experience groups. We really have done well in Penfield recruiting new people who don't have the license, training them, and then retaining them. And we don't have people, and this isn't just Penfield, it's across the country, but really I can speak to Monroe County, there's not many in line. We don't have any. We have one person being trained now. We're working to try to get others. They don't even apply.
Yeah,
And
right.
so that's really what's the frustrating piece. But this is something that we're all dealing with. And Penfield was the first, well, actually the second in the county to get hit with having to go remote because of bus
Because of
drivers.
staff-
We're
bus
not the
drivers.
first in the state. This is happening across New York State where schools are going remote because they don't have the ability to transport students to school.
We're just going to have to take it as it comes
Yeah.
then in that regard, because you just never know.
And our drivers who were out are all back, so they're hungry to work. They love driving kids. They love our students. They love the work. But it comes down to it is if we're missing people, we can't fill them.
Right.
There's not much I can do. And I will share too. I know Catherine knows and the board knows. We have our bus mechanics are able to drive. Some of our people who work in the office, like our dispatchers, can drive. So we pull them too to drive buses. It's not like we sort of put our hands up in the air and say we don't have drivers. We're reaching out. We're looking for retirees to come back. We have a couple of retirees who are driving for us on a per diem rate. So we're really doing everything, and we'll get another email out and continue to encourage folks to join our team.
Well, I think that's the best you can do.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
That concludes superintendent reports for the evening.
Thank you, Tom. Now we're at section 5A, which is change orders. So you see the list of change orders in front of you. These, I want to figure. The above change orders have been reviewed by and are supported by the architect, Vic Tomaselli, project manager Gary Huffman, and the clerk of the works, Alan McNiff, and assistant superintendent for business and finance, Dr. Dan Driffel. So a motion would be in order to approve, a motion and a second would be in order to approve the changes as described above.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Authorization to contract with FieldTurf. It is recommended that that we approve a motion that the superintendent be authorized to contract with FieldTurf for the turf replacements services as described. And so I'll read the authorization. On May 21st, 2019, the voters approved a proposition authorizing $7,550,000 for the 2019 capital project. A portion of this project is a replacement of the athletic surfaces at the Penfield High School. On October 30th, 2020, the district received a proposal from FieldTurf for the turf replacement services. This proposal utilizes the cooperative purchasing agreement, commonly referred to as piggybacking, for replacement of the turf. The district's construction manager, Campus Construction Management Group, has compared the pricing, material, labor, and scope provided by the FieldTurf to the SEI documents for the replacement of the turf field at the high school. Furthermore, in the opinion of Campus CMG, the pricing provided by the Keystone Purchasing Network contract are either at or below the amount authorized in the Keystone Purchasing Network contract and appear to be within the current market prices for our region. So a motion and a second would be in order to approve that the superintendent authorized FieldTurf for the replacement of services described above.
So moved. Second.
Any questions or comments? So I just want to, before we do, I just want to, if we could just kind of since we talked about piggybacking, to make sure people understand what that is and what that gets us in, with kind of a nutshell.
I made sure that Dr. Driffel was ready to speak about piggybacking tonight.
Yeah, so thank you. So piggybacking, if you're not aware, is the term that is authorized by the New York State Comptroller's Office, whereas we, as a municipality, local government in New York State, can utilize the pricing from another existing source. So it was developed and advocated for basically efficiency, speed. So instead of going through our own process of bidding out the work, we can go to this vendor, this business partner, and they'll honor the pricing that they gave another school district or village or town in the state of New York. Then we go and ask our construction management folks to verify that the pricing is still relevant or better than market conditions, verify that the specs associated with that bid with our architect align to our expectations, and from there, if everything still makes sense, we can engage in the piggybacking purchase. This type of procurement is authorized by board policy, and then we reaffirm that policy every single year at our reorganization meeting. So hopefully that's a quick primer on procurement piggybacking.
Great. Well, thank you. And
Sure.
And again, it's actually, I don't want to say it this way, but it's one of the things that the state has done that has actually been to our benefit.
Definitely.
So, any other questions or comments? So, motion and a second? We did that already, I'm sorry.
Yep.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. The Penfield Course Description Guide, motion would be in order that the 2021-22 Penfield High School Course Description Guide be approved as presented. So I may have a motion and a second that the 2021-2022 Penfield High School Course Description Guide be approved as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Policies. So we don't have any policies for a first read, but we do have a number for a second read. Motion, it's recommended that the board approve the following policies as presented: 6212, certification; 6420, employee personnel records and release of information; 6470, staff access to networked information resources. So may I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, president's remarks, we don't really have any. We just got back from the holidays. I think all the things that we did talk about. I know Catherine and I have legislative committee meeting from Monroe County School Board Association tomorrow. So we can discuss that at the next board meeting. So is there any unfinished, there is no unfinished business. Is there any new business? So at this time, may I have a motion and a second to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Or any questions or comments? Anyone that? All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. The meeting adjourned at 8:07. Thank you.